There's just 2 days left. The clock is ticking for Nimisha Priya, a Kerala nurse who's set to be executed on July 16th for murdering a Yemeni national in 2017. She was convicted for the crime, which is why there's been no relief or reprieve whatsoever. The central government has been making all efforts in the last many months. The government today, in fact, even told the Supreme Court that it can do no more, saying that they'd even spoken to Yemeni authorities this morning at 10:30 in the morning. But Yemen has made it very clear that there's going to be no exception given to Nimisha Priya. There are, however, some options. One is blood money. If the victim's family accepts blood money, which they haven't so far, if there's a pardon from, again, the victim's family, which again hasn't come. A last-minute push, however, is on to save her life. First, let's get you details in our report.
Another lifeline for Nimisha Priya may be slipping. Today, the government told the Supreme Court that it can no longer intervene in the case, just 2 days before Nimisha faces execution in Yemen. Convicted for the 2017 murder of Yemeni national Dalal Abdomehdi, Nimisha Priya is currently on death row. The centre said it deeply regrets the situation but underlined the limits of diplomatic intervention.
We are not getting any support from the authorities for the official team. That's why we approached the Honorable Supreme Court, and today the learned attorney has informed the court that the government has officially sought a postponement of this execution date, and they are hopeful the government of Yemen will consider that.
Diplomatically जितना उपाय हो सकता था वो सरकार ने कर रखा है, लेकिन अब सरकार की बात वहाँ यमन सरकार ने नहीं मानी, तो भारत सरकार इसमें उसके अलावा कुछ कर नहीं सकता.
It added that the only option now is for the victim's family to accept blood money, a legal provision in Yemen where compensation is offered to the family in exchange for pardoning the accused.
ആക്ഷൻ ഗേൾസിന്റെ ആൾക്കാരോടോ എംബസിയോടോ ഈ തലാലിന്റെ വീട്ടുകാർ അവരുടെ ഓപ്ഷൻ എന്താണെന്ന് പറയുന്ന കാര്യത്തിൽ അത് അനുകൂലമായി വരുന്ന സമയത്ത് ഏത് കാര്യമാണെങ്കിലും അത് ചെയ്യും. ഇപ്പം എവിടം വരെ ആയി എങ്ങനെയായി എന്ന് ഞാനിപ്പോൾ അതിനകത്ത് പറയില്ല. കാരണം ചോദിച്ചാൽ ഇതിനകത്ത് വർക്കുകൾ ചെയ്യണത് ഓൾറെഡി ഒരു യുദ്ധമേഖലയിലുള്ള സ്ഥലത്ത് നിന്നുകൊണ്ട് എംബസിയുടെ ആൾക്കാരും നമ്മുടെ അഡ്വക്കറ്റും അതുപോലെ സാമൂർ സാറ് അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ആളുകൾ ആണ് റിസ്ക് എടുത്ത് ഓരോ കാര്യങ്ങൾ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. അപ്പം അവരതിൻ്റെ ഫൈനൽ ഡിസിഷൻ നമുക്ക് തരുമ്പം ആണ് നമുക്ക് എല്ലാവർക്കും കൂടെ എടുക്കാം. അല്ലാതെ ഇപ്പോൾ ഞാനിപ്പോൾ അതിൻ്റെ അകത്ത് വേറെ ഒന്നും പറയാനില്ല.
This comes after Nimisha's husband met the Kerala governor, who promised to raise the issue with centre. Kerala Chief Minister Pinarayi Vijayan also shot off a letter to Prime Minister Modi, urging the centre to do everything possible to save Nimisha.
സർക്കാരിൻ്റെ ഭാഗം എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് ഇവിടുന്ന് നമ്മൾ ബ്രഡ സാറ് പിന്നെ രാധാകൃഷ്ണൻ സാറൊക്കെ ഇതുപോലെ തന്നെ പ്രധാനമന്ത്രിക്കും അതുപോലെ തന്നെ വിദേശമന്ത്രിക്കും ഒക്കെ ജയശങ്കർ സാറിനൊക്കെ കത്തുകൾ അയച്ചിട്ടുണ്ട്. അവരൊക്കെ മൂവ് ചെയ്തിട്ടുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ എല്ലാവരും ഓൾറെഡി മൂവിങ്ങിലാണ്. എല്ലാവരും നേരത്തെക്കാലൊക്കെ കുറച്ചുകൂടി നല്ല മൂവിയിൽ പോകുന്നുണ്ട്. നമുക്ക് വേണ്ടുന്ന കാര്യം എന്താ ചോദിച്ചാൽ ഇവരുടെ എല്ലാ ഇടപെടലുകൾ അതിശക്തമായിട്ട് ഇടപെട്ട് ഈ ഒരു കാര്യത്തിൽ നിന്ന് അത് എത്രത്തോളം പോസിറ്റീവാണെന്ന് നമുക്കറിയത്തില്ല.
Nimisha's mother remains inconsolable, pleading with the centre to save her daughter.
ഏതാനും ദിവസങ്ങൾ മാത്രമേ ഇനി ബാക്കിയുള്ളൂ എന്നാണ് ഞാൻ ഇന്നലെ അറിയുന്നത്. ആ ജീവനെ രക്ഷിക്കാൻ വേണ്ടി നിങ്ങൾ കഷ്ടപ്പെട്ട എല്ലാറ്റിനും ഞാൻ നന്ദി പറയുന്നു. എത്രയും പെട്ടെന്ന് അവളുടെ ജീവനെ രക്ഷിക്കാനും ജീവനെ നിലനിർത്താനുമായി നിങ്ങൾ എല്ലാവരും സഹായിക്കണം. അവസാനത്തെ ഒരു അപേക്ഷയാണ് എൻ്റെ.
Meanwhile, in Kerala, members of the Save Nimisha Priya Action Council met with Grand Mufti AP Abu Bakr Muslir, an influential cleric known to have strong ties with the Yemeni administration. With hours ticking down, all eyes are on whether diplomacy and last-minute prayers can save Nimisha Priya's life. Bureau Report, India Today.
Truly heartbreaking there to hear Nimisha's mother pleading for any possible help. I'll bring in Anisha Mathur to get us details of what really played out in the Supreme Court today. Anisha, if you could throw light for us on exactly what the government told the Supreme Court today when asked about what steps were being taken to save Nimisha.
Well, Akshita, let's be very clear. This is not an easy task for any government to influence a foreign government to set aside their criminal law procedures. What the Attorney General told the court today was that since there have been over the last several days
Yep.
several efforts made both by diplomatic channels as well as through trying to go through private persons, influential persons, business persons, etc., to get the family of the deceased to accept the blood money that has been put together by Nimisha's family and well-wishers. Now, where the entire issue is hanging is the fact that the deceased's family is refusing to accept that blood money. And if they do not accept it, then the Yemeni government cannot interfere. They will not set aside the death penalty very easily, because Yemeni laws are very strict when it comes to death penalties. Now, diplomatically, the Attorney General told the court that everything possible has been done. There are limits to what a government-to-government interaction, a diplomatic interaction can do in a scenario like this. But they are still hopeful that something may happen, because they're also going through sheikhs sheikhs on a personal level from
That's right.
a friendly standpoint. So we'll have to wait and see. But because remember, Nimisha was abused. Nimisha was illegally confined. She finally hit back at the person who had abused her, illegally confined her, hid away her passport. But her fight with the person ended up in his death. And that is why she's facing
the unfortunate reality is that she's been convicted, which is why right now the Yemeni authorities are saying, look, the law is the law. There's nothing we can do to help Nimisha Priya. Thanks very much, Anisha, for joining us with those details. Now, like Anisha said, there are still a few options. Time is running out, of course, because like I said, Wednesday, July 16th is when the execution will happen. But some last-ditch options that Nimisha Priya and her family really have is one, ensuring somehow a presidential pardon happens in Yemen. Right now, this looks extremely unlikely because the Yemeni government has said, look, we cannot step in this matter or offer any reprieve to Nimisha. Second, that the victim's family accepts blood money. People who've been campaigning for Nimisha's release have managed to gather money, and we understand that's about $1 million, roughly about 8.6 crore rupees. But at this point, the victim's family hasn't accepted that amount. It remains to be seen whether they'll accept 1 million. Are they expecting more? But then there's a limit to the amount also that Nimisha's family has been able to put together. Also, the third option is a Yemeni pardon due to diplomatic intervention. This is something that's been attempted for the last many weeks, for the last many months, even years, as Nimisha's lawyers tell us. But it's not really worked because Yemen has made it very clear that this is not something that they're willing to tackle diplomatically as well. Another option is for International Human Rights Appeal to highlight how Nimisha too was abused, in her case, in her appeal. Remember, she had said that she was financially, physically, mentally abused, that the victim here, who she had murdered, had kept her passport and didn't give it to her, which is what led to that scuffle and then his death. So on those grounds, also appealing, saying she had no choice. Option number 5, judicial review that could push the execution. By push, we mean delay it further and then buy more time for you to explore other avenues, other options. Well, at this point, there's no hearing that's expected to take place in the Yemeni courts, so we'll have to see whether this is even a possibility. But I'd like to bring in Ambassador Ashok Sajjanar, former Indian diplomat, to join us on this broadcast. Good evening, Ambassador Sajjanar. Unfortunate and heartbreaking, really, what's happening with Nimisha Priya. But today in the Supreme Court, the central government said that, look, there's only so much we can do. We've explored all options and there's nothing that we can do, considering the Yemeni government is not willing to, push this forward. What do you think, in your view, Ambassador Sajjanar? Is this something that India can, pile pressure on Yemen, perhaps, can do something about diplomatically?
Yeah, thank you very much, Akshita, for having me. Yes, you have given all the details very clearly, and you have, laid out the whole case. I think I could add to that a couple of points. Number one is that this is in Sanaa. She has been incarcerated. Nimisha Priya has been incarcerated in Sanaa. That is controlled by the Houthis. Now, Houthis have been so much in the news of late. So, India has not recognized the Houthi government, the Houthi administration. We do not have an embassy there. So, whatever attempts that have been made by the Indian government, they have been made basically on an informal level because we don't have any diplomatic representation there. So, that further complicates the issue. Because, in all the other cases, you would have seen, whether it was even one of our nurses, whether it was in Afghanistan or it was in Syria, very places of this nature where there is conflict, where there is war going on. But India has been able to reach out to the concerned authorities and has been able to get positive decision from there. But Yemen, and particularly the Sana'a ruled area, because if it had been in Aden, because that is internationally recognized, we have a presence there also, so I think it would have been simpler. But at the moment, as you have put it very correctly, Akshita, it is basically the informal manner approach that could yield some results, that could yield some positive dividends.
Okay.
And in that context, I think it is approaching some of the sheikhs who might be more
Correct.
favorably inclined towards the Houthi administration, towards the Sana'a government. I think that has, I can see a ray of hope there that, could definitely
Yes, and,
yield
and that's something that activist groups have been doing, reaching out to sheikhs, to clerics who are in India, also highly influential in Yemen. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that that will provide some reprieve to Nimisha as well. But like I said, time is of the essence here. We've got just about 1.5 days to go before her execution. I just want to break down for our viewers, and Ambassador Sajna, I request you to stay with us. I just want to break down the laws currently in Yemen on what happens if one of their nationals, their citizens, are murdered. Why is it that Nimisha Priya is facing execution right now? Well, as far as murder goes, it's punishable by death. It's referred to as qisas in Yemeni law. Intentional murder could lead to execution if the victim's family demands it. In this case, in Nimisha Priya's case, the victim's family very much demanded it, which is why you're seeing a death punishment being given to Nimisha. Blood money as an alternative is also something that's considered all right and acceptable by Yemeni law, which is why we've been referring to it as one of the options for Nimisha Priya here. The victim's family can go ahead and forgive the killer in exchange for blood money, avoiding execution. But the catch here is that the victim's family will dictate how much. So, there can be no limit to that. If they are willing to even look at this, is referred to as diya, then they will go ahead and set the amount that they expect. Again, in Nimisha's case, the money that they've offered is $1 million, which so far has been rejected. Leniency for honor killings. So imagine this, while murder is punishable by death, as far as honor killings go, there is an article in Yemeni law that actually allows reduced sentences for honor-based killings by male relatives. Sounds terribly regressive? Well, it is. That's how it is in Yemen. Essentially, that if a male relative kills his family members as an honor killing, they can ensure reduced sentences, sometimes just 1 to 2 years. Even juveniles are not legally executable. Execution of minors is banned, but you see that happening, unfortunately, in Yemen. There have been multiple such documented cases of the fact that some people not having documents leads to violations, leads to executions of minors as well. But also, mind you, that as far as hangings, executions are concerned, a presidential approval is required by law. No death sentence can be carried out without the president's approval. In the case of Nimisha Priya, unfortunately, that approval has already come in. Now, while what we've described to you is the state law, is the law followed in Yemen, there's a tribal law. There are tribal regions in Yemen where things are very different, where their law essentially decides what happens. So murders are often settled through diya, which I told you was blood money, through exile or through mediation. So in some cases, tribal laws can also kick in. I want you to listen into a conversation that my colleague Geeta Mohan had with Samuel Jerome, who's working closely with the Save Nimisha Priya Action Council. He spoke to her last week on all the efforts being taken up right now to save Nimisha.
What's happening on the ground? As somebody who's worked on this case ever since the beginning of the case, how do you see, or how hopeful are you that there could be a positive turn of events and this execution can actually stop?
Actually, there are two distinct things in this case. One is the legal, the other is the tribal. So the legal has done its part. So that is where we have reached, and the execution date has come. Now, in the tribal part, you need to understand that we have already directly spoken with the family. Okay. And the offer had been given. There is no response from the family, which is somewhat very negative which is very negative.
Basically, blood
So,
money.
but see, now again, I need to clarify what blood money is. There is nothing called blood money. If the family forgives,
Yeah.
then there is a money to be paid that is called the blood money. Families don't forgive because money is being paid. So people have to clearly understand this. If the family forgives, yes, then there is a negotiated blood money. So we had given an offer. I mean, in case that if the family forgives, and that this is what we could offer, and that is to the tune of $1 million plus medical assistance and assistance to the brother of the deceased if he wants to settle in UAE or Saudi Arabia. So these are the offer that we have put it on the table.
Up until now, Samuel, you're saying the family is not convinced.
I
What
don't
are
know.
they saying? What are they saying?
No, they are not saying anything. No, they are not saying anything. That's the problem. They are not saying yes or they are not saying no, which I take it as, I mean, me being
A window.
optimistic. The window is there. That is what I mean. If there is a no, it could be a no, but then I'm optimistic to see that there is a way forward. But again, I mean, I don't want to put the government of India in a difficult situation. They have really, really hurt, and the very thing that Nimisha is alive because then Minister of State General VK Singh gave a letter for this lady to be brought to due legal things. So that is why she was brought into that legal thing, and she's alive because of this letter.
Samuel, how's the family holding up? Are they in Sanaa?
Yeah, the mother is in my home in Sanaa. She is there, and I did speak to her yesterday night, and we didn't. She didn't spoil. I mean, she has been. I mean, to be honest, I mean, she's very emotional. So, I mean, like, I didn't want to talk to her until I go there. Really, I mean, like, so I just let it be like that. Whatever she's hearing from the news and all those things, I keep it as it. So until I am physically there, then I can handle the situation myself because she's a very fragile lady.
And there are multiple such lawyers, activists, not just in Yemen, but here in India too, who are doing everything they can to attempt and save Nimisha from execution. Ambassador Sajjanar, one of the options that we also referred to during this broadcast is on international human rights law. Do you think that can also help in kind of preventing Nimisha's execution? Because you look at the extraordinary details of this case, of why she killed this man. Will that matter? Will that count?
Akshita, I would have thought that when the arguments for the case were going on, if that had been put forward and, we had used the good offices of the international human rights organizations and brought in the international human rights law, basically that she was acting in self-defense, because it is... she had been oppressed so much, she had been sort of, taken advantage of so much, and she was fighting for her rights, and as a result of that, this accident took place and her partner got killed. At that time, if we had come up and if the international human rights organizations had also stepped in, possibly there could have been some, something that we could have gone by. But right now, as you mentioned very clearly, the decision has been taken. The decision has gone to the highest authority, that is to the president, and we've got the concurrence. So they've got the concurrence from the president for her execution. So, reopening the case at this time on that basis, to me, it appears to be rather difficult. So, these two options that we've been discussing in the program, one is possibility of providing blood money to the victim's family, and the second is through informal channels, both in the region as well as within India, to sort of reach out to the authorities that be. in
Yeah.
Sanaa in Yemen to persuade them to hold this death sentence execution in abeyance.
Unfortunately, it's going to take nothing short of a miracle to save Nimisha
Indeed.
Priya, because the clock is ticking and we're at the very end. We're just about less than 2 days away from her execution. So it's going to take a miracle essentially to save her right now. But we hope that happens. We hope somehow she is saved. Thanks very much, Ambassador Sajjanar, for joining us with your view on what could transpire and how India perhaps could step in. It's rather challenging, rather difficult for India also diplomatically to kind of engage this regime and ensure that there is some reprieve for Nimisha Priya, which is why for the last many years, while this has dragged on, that's pretty much all that India has been able to do. But like I said, the execution, the hanging is slated to happen on Wednesday, and we're going to hope and pray that some reprieve comes Nimisha Priya and her family's way. That's all we have time for in this edition of News Track. Thanks very much for tuning in. I'm leaving you with a rather alarming report. Our beloved, India's beloved street snacks are about to come with a reality check. The Ministry of Health has now directed all central government institutions to install prominent oil and sugar boards that warn citizens about the hidden fat and sugar content in everyday favorites. We're talking about samosas, jalebis, vada paos and laddus. There are some comparisons being made of samosas and jalebis to cigarettes. I'm leaving you with this report.
What's in a giant samosa? And a jalebi? Or a small gulab jamun? I mean, who does not love barish mein pakode? Well, we all do. But now, the government wants us to think twice before we reach out for our favorite samosa or pakoda, equating these loved street foods with tobacco. The government is now calling for strong warnings on the same and for the right reasons.
समोसे का फोटो रहेगा, नीचे लिखा रहेगा कि 100 ग्राम समोसे में कितना फैट है, और बाजू में एक स्टिकर रहेगा कि इससे जो फैट और ऑयल है, वो शुगर है, उससे कैसे हमारा साइड इफेक्ट बॉडी पे होता है, कैसा मोटापा आता है और मोटापे से आगे क्या होता है.
Essentially, this has become important from the point of view of handling the rise of metabolic diseases in the country, which is diabetes and obesity. And this is an extension exactly of that. The Health Ministry advising all places to do this, to display an oil board, to display a sugar board. Well, this certainly is a step in the right direction. But the elephant in the room has not been addressed. There are many other problems involving ultra-processed food. What about front of the food package labeling? That's an issue that hasn't been addressed. What about advertisements? Ultra-processed foods which are endorsed by celebrities. That again is an issue which has not been addressed, at least in this particular advisory. The advisory from the Health Ministry has asked for installation of oil boards and sugar boards, print health messages on official stationery, and promote healthy meals and physical activity. But a lot more needs to be done in this direction.
We would like to draw the attention of the government towards policy framework and regulations which actually ban advertisements and put front of the pack warning labels which are able to reduce the demand and consumption of ultra-processed food products.
India had 18 crore overweight and obese people in 2021. It's going to increase to 44.4 crore obese people in 2050. India has earned the unenviable title of the diabetes capital of the world. And this step is a good one in the direction to improve our metabolic health. In New Delhi, Sneha Mordani for India Today TV.